is time for the Writer's Block, our weekly look at sports, and more sports. I'm Jenni Carlson here in the studios of the Oklahoman, joined by Cedric Golden in, well, not the studios of the Austin American-Statesman, but somewhere in Austin or close, I think, right?
Hey, I'm in an undisclosed location, and I will just say there is a mortgage involved, Jen. So take a wild guess.
Very good. We'll leave it at that. We don't want the hordes of fans and adoring public to be beating on your door, so we'll leave it at
They've
that.
already been here. They've already been here, both of them. They were both here. Yeah.
Come and gone. I get it. Hey, all right, let's start this week with a story that it's not a sports story per se, but it seems to be infringing more and more on the sports world, and that's the coronavirus. I wish we were talking about Corona beer and not coronavirus, said, but here we are. The virus that's affecting so many things worldwide. We've started to see some sporting events be affected by this. A couple of lower level Division I basketball programs saying that they're not going to travel to the state of Washington to play games this weekend. That's as we sit here. More could happen. Now the question starts to come, what else is going to be affected? Primarily on the short time on our schedule, NCAA tournament. I mean, that seems like that's going to be something that we're going to have to keep a serious eye on.
Jen, could you imagine filling an NCAA tournament game? You know how exciting that first day is, and the gym is empty?
Yeah.
That would just kill the fabric of sports as we know it. This virus, it is a real life situation, and many times sports is an escape, but real life enters in there, and this is one of those moments. In Austin, where I live, the South by Southwest Festival is an international event, and big companies like Facebook and Twitter and Amazon and TikTok are pulling out because of safety concerns. Public health is the number one priority here, and everything else kind of has to step in line, including sports. I hate that this is happening. It is a brutal time in our history. Our scientists are quick at work, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be a quick fix. Jen, the NCAA tournament could be affected. How about the Summer Olympics?
Yeah.
The biggest gathering of athletes in the world every 4 years. They're thinking about moving that.
Yeah, it's definitely a topic that's out there. We've already seen some soccer matches over in Europe that have been played in front of empty arenas. If you think about the energy that comes with international soccer leagues, I mean, those sorts of venues without fans, that's already happening as officials try to slow the spread of this thing. And obviously the Olympic Games later in the year, it's end of July, 1st of August time frame for those Summer Olympics in Tokyo. But Cedric, I think you're right. You look at where this virus started, it's spread into South Korea, obviously that part of the world. Japan has been affected to some degree, as now we're seeing across the globe. Basically, most countries that have international travel in and out of there, they're seeing those cases as people travel. So I do think that the Summer Olympics, it's got to be something that the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, as well as these other nations are thinking about. Cedric, it sounds like that, there was some talk earlier that if the Olympics were affected, they would have to be canceled outright. But now I'm hearing word, at least out there, that, if there is a problem, they could delay it into a later point of the year. But it sounds like they're thinking about these things very seriously at this point.
They don't have a choice. And the one thing about the Olympics, Jennifer, people like Carl Lewis and Al Order, they're the exception, not the rule. Those are people that competed in multiple Olympics. For 90% of these Olympians, it's a one-off thing.
Right.
This is your one time in your life. You've trained for this moment. You've been doing it for 15 years, and now you're at the peak of your physical abilities. You're in your prime, most likely in your early 20s. And now you're looking at maybe not going. So 40 years after the U.S. boycotted Moscow, it might have to not go to Tokyo. And I know that the disease affects older people more than younger people, but it doesn't mean that you can't get it as a young person.
Mm.
So, and the thing that's scarier are there are different strains of it. I mean, they're calling it the new coronavirus now. And I was like, what happened to the old one? They didn't even have a cure for that one. So
Yeah.
for me, I'm very, very worried and concerned about the athletes, about our citizens, about the people worldwide, especially in those countries in Asia where it's really prevalent, and also in Italy.
Yeah. Yeah. And you think about from the Olympic standpoint, while the athletes might not be affected, you've got the world coming to one spot and then going back out into the world, and what could happen with a reignition of transmission. And if there's a certain country where the virus, or several countries where the virus is going, could they talk about potentially keeping those countries out? I can't imagine that would be well received if, say, Italy was still having the outbreak that they've had right now and they weren't allowed, or China wasn't allowed. I just don't know if you could do that if you're the Olympic Committee. So that would be a real big challenge. And Cedric, I think you're right about those athletes that are, in a very short window for Olympic competition. I think about somebody that you and I have both covered, Kat Osterman. She's an Olympic softball player. She's come out of retirement to be part of that U.S. Olympic team. The sport of softball is in this Olympics in Tokyo because Tokyo wanted an exemption for it and baseball, another sport that had been taken off the Olympic roster. And both of those sports are very popular in Japan, so they're in this year's Olympics, but no guarantee moving forward that either of those sports will be on any future Olympic sport roster. So somebody like Kat Osterman, who's worked so hard to get back into that Olympic shape, and she's been in the Olympics before. There are some that have not. So I think you're exactly right. It's a really tough situation, but at the end of the day, you've got to think about bigger issues than just one event or one time. Safety and health is obviously paramount, and that'll be a consideration that will continue, whether it's Olympics, NCAA tournaments, or other sporting events. We'll obviously continue to follow that and probably talk about it more as time goes on.